Anybody here on that? Oops, I got a few people still coming in. So Fowler and Fowler was, I believe, just on for review of guardian ad litem reports. And I don't see one. Is there anybody appearing on the Fowler and Fowler matter? Oh, there's Miss Corey. Well, I'll come back to that one. It seems like we're having a connection issue there, so I'll recall that one. I understand there is a revised order incoming.
Yes, did Your Honor see Ms. Joslin's email in regards to the one issue on the visitation lay oath, the lay oath supervisor agreement?
I've not had a chance to look at that.
Okay. So do you just want to look at that and get back to us informally, and
sure,
we can renote it if we need to?
Okay, I will do that. I apologize. I didn't see that come in this afternoon.
That's okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll address that and I'll get an email out to you both this afternoon on that.
Okay.
I do not see her.
I'm here, Your Honor. Tina Day, guardian ad litem.
Good afternoon.
So I've not received a proposed order from
I do not have anything in the file at this point.
So I guess my question, do you want me to see if I can get her on the phone so she can appear, or I can tell the court that I had sent out an email, or my assistant sent out an email last week asking for the order. We hadn't received it. She sent an email to me this morning asking if I had any objections. I had responded back that I hadn't received an order, and she said she'd get back to me, but I haven't heard from her. So I guess my suggestion is either I can go off and give her a call and see if I can't get her on here, or alternatively, my suggestion is that we set this over to May 7th at 1 o'clock for presentation, and I can give her notice of that so that she has time to get me an order. I'm not here as of tomorrow afternoon until next Wednesday, so I'm out through next Tuesday.
Okay,
So,
we don't have a docket on the 30th either, so.
right.
My thought would, let's go ahead and put it on the 7th. I haven't seen any orders come through at all in this case either, so that makes sense.
Okay. I'll send an email to both her and Ms. Day that confirms that the court set it over for then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Your Honor, I'm here.
Good afternoon. On the Fowler and Fowler matter, I think this was on for guardian ad litem compliance. I see Miss Corey is connected up now. I don't see a report yet, so where are we at on that one?
You wouldn't see a report yet. We're at a compliance review today.
Okay. Where are we at?
So I have been in contact with Ms. Fowler, Danae Fowler. She's completed her intake and we've had our first interview. Mr. Fowler did leave a voicemail for me last week, and I've been trying to get in touch with him. He was apparently in inpatient treatment and expected to be out, he said, on the 11th. I've placed a couple of calls to him in the last couple of days with no response. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Well, if he was theoretically just out last Thursday, that my thought would maybe if we put just another review on maybe on the 7th of May, see where we're at on it.
Okay.
I don't want to go too long, but 1 week's probably not sufficient. We don't have docket on the 30th. So when is our next review? Not till June 11th. So why don't we do that? Let's review it on the 7th of May. We'll check status and see if we need to make change of plans.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Holder, any other issues on this case at this point?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. So we'll come back on the 7th at 1 o'clock to check status on the GAL.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Second here, get a couple more. Welcome.
The judge did receive communication from Ms. Bott, who did indicate that she is in, I want to say, Snohomish County, and asked that we do this at the end of the docket. She had said preference for after 2:30. I'm not sure we're going to be here that long, but nonetheless.
We can put it at the end and we'll take a look at it.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Those orders. Okay. But it sounds like, Mr. Zandy, did you get a copy of the email? Well, that indicates there's.
Yeah, there's been 2 or 3 different sets of orders. I don't see that a lot of the changes were made. I think on the temporary order, family support was interposed as opposed to spousal support. So I think that change has been made. I think the substantive basis of my objections have not.
Okay, that has been changed on the one I'm looking at.
And that's the one from the April 12th, I believe.
Correct.
And that's the last set I got. I did receive an email, I think, late yesterday afternoon. I don't know if that was amended orders again, or if that was the same set that we received the 12th.
Same set.
That's the same set?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So with that change, you're agreeable to these orders?
No,
You're not on temporary?
no, there's still others we got to work through.
Okay.
You want me just to kind of go down the list?
Yeah, I was only looking at the 3 that were in the letter. So there's additional that be.
No, that's fine. So we'll start with the temporary order. Paragraph 5, that change has been made. Paragraph 9 has not. And that specifically relates to each party paying his and her respective household fees, debts, mortgage, rents, and the like. I think you made that abundantly clear that that was the intent of the order. But my count 3 times, and it's reflected that my client still is paying the mortgage on the home that Mrs. Francis was awarded on a temporary basis. It's the case where the court divided the incomes and the family support equally. And again, I think in line with that order that both were to have to pay their own respective household expenses. Certainly the mortgage of $1,000 a month on the Kelso house would apply. So we're asking that that be reflected in your order.
Mr. Trotter?
Yes, so it's based on my notes and the minutes, and it was unclear whether or not whether my client was responsible for the mortgage, and so that's where I think we're looking for clarity. It is her job ended recently yesterday, and so I just don't know how she can support all of that as well as everything else. So that'd be the second piece of that question. It's just clarity on whether who's to pay the mortgage, and then I wanted to make that note.
Well, when I reviewed I went back and listened to the hearing because my notes were a little scribbled, so just to refresh my memory. Essentially, what I had done is I divided up the income based on what I had, and then imposed the child support based on that equalized income. And the mortgage payment, as long as she's there, would be her responsibility. If he's there, that would be his responsibility. So whoever's in that residence would be the one paying that. And I believe she was wanting to stay there.
That's correct. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so I will adjust this order to reflect that.
Then along that same vein, Judge, paragraph 10, again, I think you specifically said that Visa Platinum was Mrs. Francis's responsibility. I understand that's the card she primarily uses. You did indicate that it was permissible for each party to make the minimum payments until we could resolve this divorce. So I again, just ask that that be reflected in the following paragraph.
Mr. Trotter?
Yeah, we're just looking for clarification on that as well, based on my horrible notes. It sounds like if that was correct.
I believe what I said, they were each going to be paying their minimum payments only on debt in their names. And I didn't have a real clear in my mind. I know I didn't have a real clear listing of whose was in whose names, but if that was in her name, it would be hers.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Your Honor.
So under debts, let me just double check here. I think I'm just going to add where it says current debt in their name.
Okay.
Just for clarity. Okay.
And paragraph 11 is the standard civil restraining orders. We just ask, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't apply to both parties, that neither make any changes to medical health, life, property, or auto insurance that covers either spouse. For some reason, the order reflects that just my client is responsible for that. We just ask that that standard language that both parties not make any of those changes be adopted.
Any objection to that, Mr. Trotter?
No, just going back to There's nothing much I can do at this point, but it's just in terms of her ability to make these payments is concerned with her income after the 15th. But aside from that,
Okay, well, the restraint piece was just simply neither of them make changes.
correct. Yeah,
And if there needs to be something that needs to be adjusted for whatever reason, that can certainly be done by agreement of the parties, but
because each party should pay for his or her own automobile insurance.
correct.
Okay.
And that's it for the temporary order. Progressing to the parenting
Give
plan.
me just a sec, let me sign this, so I've got it. Okay, I've signed that order. So which one are we going to next?
Parenting plan.
Okay,
And it looks like paragraph 8, that change was made. Paragraph 10 looks like that change was made. That leaves paragraph 12, which relates to the exchange location. The order includes that all drop-offs, all exchanges occur at the marital home. Again, that we didn't have any specific order on that. You adopted my client's proposed parenting plan, which basically has that each is responsible to pick up at his or her time to start their visit. So we're just asking that that be included.
one of the proposed was that, Mr. Trotter, I don't know that I addressed that specifically, but
And I don't
Yeah,
think-
that's what I was I was thinking about here is that given the concerns about monitoring for alcohol, we'd like for the child to be dropped up at at the marital home.
And again, this is one where I think you specifically ordered that you are adopting my client's proposed parenting plan with a couple of modified changes. And again, I think my client's proposed parenting plan, from what I recall, has each responsible to pick up and start his or her respective time.
thought that actually the proposal from her was that each pick up at each parent's home.
Well,
And I thought actually yours might have been different, Mr. Zandy, than
no,
that.
I think it was the same. I thought we were in agreement on that. That was not specifically related in my notes for argument during the time of the hearing 2 weeks ago, which usually means it's an uncontested issue. And the first time we saw that was in the proposed order. So again, it's not necessarily, I think, a significant issue in the grand scheme of things, but I just would like clarity on that. And my recollection was that you wanted each to pick up and start at his or her time.
Yeah. And back to the alcohol pieces, which is our preference would be for the exchanges to occur at the marital home for the reason stated, for the monitoring of the alcohol. That would be the preference given that concern.
I guess I'm not understanding that because he would be picking up at the home, so she would be able to check, and then she would be picking up at the end. So I don't know if that makes a difference.
She's picking up from the end. Yeah, because they're. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Yeah, that's I'm. Let's. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the
Just each pick up.
Yeah.
I'll just cross out the marital home at each to pick up at beginning of visit. And I'll cross out the who's responsible, because that takes care of itself. Okay,
Thank you.
Lastly was the child support order.
let me
We can
sign this.
transition to that.
Let me sign this before we get to there.
She has to pay the mortgage. She would have to pay the first.
Yep. So, yeah, as for, there was proposal to half due on the 10th and the other half due on the 1st and the 15th. And the concern was that by paying the mortgage, her responsibility to pay the mortgage, she's going to have a cash flow issue. And so for that reason, we asked that it occur at the start of the month.
Mr. Zandy, I don't know that I specifically
You didn't, and it's based on the pay periods for my client. So he'll be paying about $3,100 a month between the family support and the child support. You set the effective start date to April 1. My understanding is my client's already paid the mortgage for this month, so he should get a credit on that. And as it pertains specifically to the 10th and 25th, again, that mirrors his pay periods. So she could certainly have adequate funds to pay the mortgage on her home, as she's going to be getting a payment on the 25th of this month. So I think that that's of about approximately $1,500. So that should be a moot point, given April's already paid.
And he's paid every two,
Correct.
on the 1st and 15th, or
It might be twice a month. I don't think it's necessarily every 2 weeks. I think it's twice a month. But again, I can confirm that and check with him when I get back to the office. And he's recently moved into an apartment on Solomon Road in Kelso to the tune of $1,900 a month, which is pretty close to what everybody anticipated his rent would be a couple of weeks ago during the hearing. And that will be due at the beginning of the month. So that puts a big onus on him. If he's paying the $3,100 plus $1,900, that's a significant amount of money to come out by the 5th.
I think since the payment for this month for the rent has already been, or for the mortgage has already been paid, I think that probably makes sense. Both these folks, I mean, there's never enough money to go around, even on the best of cases. So what I'm going to do is I'll put one payment on the 5th and one payment on the, you said 1st and 15th?
We're asking for the 10th and 25th. If it's the 5th and the 20th, I'll tell my client to make it work. But again, with the way the pay periods line up, his preference was the 10th and the 25th.
Well, she's got to get the payments made. So I'm using the 5th and the 20th.
Okay.
Yep.
I believe that's the extent of my objections, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yeah, and that resolved it for us as well. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Let me just get that signed in just a second here. I think I saw Miss. Yeah, she's here. Okay, great. All right, so this is, I have one set of proposed order on this from Ms. McLean. Ms. Andy, did you provide proposed order?
I don't typically do that on cases with such a influx of possible resolutions to them or orders.
Okay,
I'd rather get the order from the court and do it once as opposed to coming back and potentially doing it twice.
Okay.
So no, I did not propose anything
okay,
outside of the proposed parenting plan, which we're asking you to adopt.
okay. So the motion, which was filed 3/21, that was filed by Mr. Zandy's office. So I believe that's the matter that is pending.
Correct.
So if you want to argue that.
Very well. And thank you, Your Honor. As the court's aware, I do represent the respondent in this matter, namely Jason Moses, and you have the history in front of you. This has been a case that's been dragging. So was that you, Ms. McLean?
No,
I think we had somebody on the phone making a note.
Has been dragging on for some time. This is one that started as a dissolution. Parties have now gone through GAL extensive investigation, have gone through family counsel with Charlotte Rosen. And my client details for you his efforts to essentially overcome this ongoing allegation posed by his ex-wife related to his pornography issues and alleged addictions. He's gone above and beyond what I think anybody initially expected of him to prove that he is certainly not a danger to these kids and certainly not a danger to any child, as he is a middle school teacher in the local area. We look at this again from a practical perspective. Certainly my client is asking you to adopt his proposed parenting plan as it promotes a relationship, a strong relationship that he's always enjoyed with Braxton and Lincoln. And again, these kids are at a point where they deserve strong relationships with both mom and dad. And I think that fact is ironed out and verified from the GAL in her most recent report. And certainly the only way to do that is to have ample time and sufficient time with both mom and dad. And again, these kids have the luxury of having two parents who love them, but unfortunately two parents who have not been able to get along or see eye to eye on what the parenting plan moving forward should be. Thus, we're here. Now, my client has been completely open and honest with this court from the onset. This is one where commissioners, I believe it was Nelson, Cotterell, and most recently Carmi, heard these matters and basically deferred to wanting more information. They wanted evaluations done. They wanted input from the GAL, wanted to see kind of the status of the counseling, and we've done that. Frankly, as I sat here and prepared for this case yesterday afternoon, I thought there's really nothing more that my client can do to earn the trust of this court. And we provided information from that dating back to November of 2022, when we submitted and published the first report from Dr. Kirk Johnson. Since that time, my client has proceeded with providing privileged information. My client has proceeded with signing waivers. He continued to meet with his treatment specialist, with the sexual addiction specialist. He sought input from Ms. Lovely, again, which validates largely that of Dr. Johnson. He's undergone psychosexual evaluations, lie detector tests. He's done absolutely everything to prove he's no danger. At this point, everybody accepts that except for one person, and that is unfortunately Ms. Moses, who continues to impress upon him and impress upon this court her belief that he is somehow a danger to these kids. And I think if you look back at the history of this, you're going to see somebody, and I'll get to some of the other issues that we have that kind of show this attitude and some of this lingering resentment that has permeated this case from the onset of this. Fortunately, we're in a place now where the kids are being impacted by that. Kids are usually, typically off limits from that, but unfortunately in this case, we have these ideologies of mom who says your dad has problems, and we have this push-pull on these kids who is starting to take an emotional toll. Adopting our proposed parenting plan, adopting that's been put forth by Ms. Height as the GAL, alleviates a lot of that, takes a lot of pressure out of that balloon, and gives these kids a good relationship with mom, a good relationship with dad, ample time with both, which is only going to promote their best interests so that they can preserve that relationship. These kids love both mom and dad, and these kids want to make both mom and dad happy. But unfortunately, they're now being used as a pawn in this game, by which our position simply is Ms. Moses just continues to try to exert her control, despite all of the opinions and recommendations of the experts. Starting back in November of 2022. Again, if you look at that information that was provided by Dr. Johnson at that time, states based on the present assessment, Mr. Moses does not present as a sexual risk to his children. In fact, the information that we provided in the evaluation back then showed that he was well within the normal ranges and that there was no concerns noted in any of those evaluations. Fast forward more recently, and this is after we published that. This was after Ms. Moses then says, well, that didn't do enough. I want more information. We need more tests, more evaluations to kind of cure these issues. My client, to his credit, submitted that voluntarily on February 27th. And this is a subsequent report was issued, this time by Ms. Lovely, which states, based on the above information gathered regarding this client, no recommendations for treatment are offered. Mr. Moses does not appear to pose a risk to his children. That's the second expert we have. And again, if you look at the information that was contained in her report, how she got to that point, a psychosexual exam, polygraph testing, she had collateral input from the GAL and Ms. Moses alike. She reviewed Dr. Johnson's report, and all of that came back clean. Fast forward, and again, what's happening during the period of the last couple of years since these parties have been separated? My client continued to meet with counselors. We provided information from Tyler Chinchin, which again is his sexual addiction counselor, that says Jason's been doing very, very well. There's no issues related to him and his ability to have his kids. Every step of the way, mom says, well, despite all that information, despite the onslaught of evaluations and results from professionals, I disagree with those professionals. Last time we were in court, Commissioner Carmi said, well, that's great. I applaud that. But at that point, we didn't have the information from Olivia Lovely. We didn't have the lie detector test. We didn't have the psychosexual exam. Should I want information from Ms. Height before we do anything or make any changes to this parenting plan? We now have that. And what does Ms. Height say? Ms. Height, again, I think it's important to stress, states that we've got two kids who love and appreciate both mom and dad. And I believe it was in her report that says enough is enough. It's time to reestablish this relationship. It's time to have these kids lead some kind of normal life with dad, because literally all of the evaluations have come back clean. All of the experts share one common opinion, and that is that this man is of no danger to children, most importantly, his own. We look at mom's actions since then. And again, this has been kind of the course of conduct for the past couple of years while this case has been pending. We have this allegation last fall in which my client put his hand or did something inappropriate with one of the children, his own children, at a soccer game on 7th Avenue in front of 200 spectators. She doesn't confront him, doesn't call the police, but waits until court to say, oh, by the way, my mom and one of my friends witnessed him doing something to one of the children. We have this issue with a sander, which frankly is astonishing that we're having this issue with two adult people, in which she is so kind and gives him the box to the sander, but doesn't include the sander inside of it. Instead says, well, the sander was a gift, but here's the empty box. We have the same person who now tells my client's now current wife, this is a bifurcated case, they've been divorced or just have the parenting plan to deal with, tells his wife that my client is a liar, tries to impose her will in that relationship, and then comes back and
I guess
says,
I'm going to object as to the hearsay statements that are being presented by counsel. Those are not appropriate and not provided in sworn declarations by individuals that directly spoke with my client, supposedly.
in any event,
Well, I'll sustain as it relates to
you
hearsay.
look at the information on all of this, and it's just one thing after the other after the other. You look at the phone calls, and again, this was something that was addressed some time ago. Everybody agreed, me included, that it's best to be child-led. And this was several months ago. Child-led phone calls is going to work for these kids. They haven't. Ms. Moses, unfortunately, takes that upon herself to say and dictate to these kids when they cannot have phone and FaceTime communications with their father. And a
And
presentation
objection as to hearsay.
that's not hearsay. He knows that. That's part of the GAL report as well.
Well, the jail report's not hearsay as to what's in it.
So
I've already reviewed it.
Looking through all of these different measures and these extreme efforts by mom to try to get in the way and impede on the relationship between dad and the kids is very problematic. What's my client tell you? My client tells you, and he's very active in this. I think everybody agrees, and probably Miss Moses as well. He's active with these kids. He goes to their sporting events, he goes to their practices, he goes to their games. If it falls on mom's time, mom takes the kids directly out of the handshake line, takes them and ushers them to the car, preventing my client from saying, "Good game, I love you, I'll talk to you later." That's how much control she's exerting. That's how much control she's dictating over these kids' lives, and basically doing what? An attempt to alienate dad, an attempt to punish dad from issues that largely predate the conception and the birth of these kids, which again is just another measure of her imposing her will on my client. That must stop. The time is right. It's certainly reasonable. It's certainly in these kids' best interest to expand on what is currently there. That seems to be the general suggestion of everybody involved in this case outside of Ms. Moses. And again, we're asking you to largely adopt the GAL recommendation. If you look at the schedules and how those line up, we have several advantages in this case. One advantage is my client is an educator at a local middle school. His schedule largely mirrors that of the kids within 30 minutes or so of before school and after school. We have mom who largely works from home. They're both available for these kids. My client gives you his suggestion for this. And again, it works very well for these kids, which is during the school year, we largely take what Ms. Height has recommended and we adopt that, which is once a week, Thursday overnight to Friday. In the off weeks or his weekend time, he gets Thursday to Monday. There's very little issue with that. He takes the kids, he wakes up, takes them to their school where there's about 30 minutes by the time they get dropped off until they go to class, in which there's the early child learning activities. There may be another name for that, but nonetheless, that's what happens. They're there for 30 minutes. They get accustomed to the routine. They go to school, and my client is there to pick them up probably before they are actually released for the day. And so again, this lines up perfectly. Transition into the summer. And again, the summers, we are asking for a week on, week off plan. There's really no reason not to do that. My client details for you for the past 2.5 to 3 years, he's been unable to celebrate any extended periods of time with these kids for holidays, for vacations, for anything long weekends of the sort, because he's been, again, kind of contained by this order, which requires him, to get all the evaluations done, get the GAL input, which we now have. He would like to take the kids to New Mexico to visit extended family, and that's where his family is largely from. He tells me he would like to take the kids camping, fishing, Disneyland trips, those types of things that for the last 2+ years he's been missing out on. Again, based in large part because his ex-wife continues to make these same allegations time and time again. It's evident. Nothing he does is going to appease her. No test he does, no evaluation, no recommendation from any expert is going to make it so she recognizes the fact that he is of no danger to these kids. Again, we're recycling the same arguments from her that we've heard time and time again, that now is not borne out by the GAL investigation. It's not borne out by any information in those expert reports, and it's certainly not borne out by any opinions of said expert. It's time to transition. These kids deserve it, and my client certainly deserves it, and we're asking you to adopt our temporary parenting plan, which again largely mirrors that of the recommendation of Ms. Height.
Thank you. Ms. McLean.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. May it please the court, I do represent the petitioner, Catherine Moses, in this case. I'm assuming that the court has had an opportunity to review somewhat through the history of this case. You'll note that originally the temporary parenting plan was entered back on March 31 of 22. At that time, Mr. Moses was ordered to complete an evaluation sufficient to address his sex and pornography addiction issues. He was ordered to start any recommended treatment, and he was ordered to provide the evaluation, treatment recommendations, compliance reports, including proof of any attendance at sex addiction groups, both to the court and to the parties involved, which would include my office on behalf of my client and Ms. Height. Mr. Moses has provided conflicting statements to the court and during the assessments, both with Dr. Johnson and Ms. Lovely. And I think that that's consistent with individuals who are in addiction who are trying to minimize their information. Specifically, his declaration that he filed back on March 4th of 2022, at page 1, line 23, he says, "I do not have a porn addiction as present." So March of 2022. Mr. Moses asked the court for extended holiday time back in November of 2022. And at that time, he provided no proof of compliance with the temporary parenting plan regarding participating in the evaluations or any recommended services. His reply declaration that he filed on November 10 of 2022 at page 5, line 12, said he has been to men's groups, seen a counselor, and submitted to an evaluation, which was the evaluation with Dr. Kirk Johnson, but there was absolutely no proof provided of any of that at that time. Later, the court order from that hearing was entered. As the court recalls, Commissioner Cotterell heard that motion, and then he was out due to medical issues. So ultimately, it was Commissioner Nelson who entered that order on April 14 of 2023, and that's clerk paper 59. And from that hearing, it was found that the evaluation completed by Dr. Kirk Johnson did not comply with the order, that Mr. Moses had provided no proof of commencing any sexual addiction treatment, and that the court did not believe Mr. Moses' statements that his sexual appetite and pornography use at that time was currently normal. The court further found that Mr. Moses' statement that, quote, sexual addiction thing is growing quite old, unquote, suggests an attitude. On November 16 of 2022, the evaluation from Dr. Johnson was filed, and that was geared towards sexual deviancy rather than internet sexual abuse or addiction and compulsivity issues. The declaration that Mr. Moses filed on November 15 of 2023 at page 3, and so this is a year later, line 18 said, quote, I just recently finished meeting with a certified sex addiction therapist, Tyler Chinchin, for over a year and a half. So if we're in November of 2023, 18 months prior to that would have been roughly July of 2022. And yet, in his declarations in November, he's saying, I don't have a problem. This is not an issue for me. He also says in that declaration from November 15 of 2023, I've also participated in a sexual integrity group through a local church for over 9 months. There is not one proof of an evaluation, of a treatment plan, or of attendance records for Mr. Moses at treatment or through group. None of this was disclosed to Ms. Height during her investigation or considered in her investigation. She at no time has talked to Mr. Chinchin according to her reports. And none of that documentation has been submitted to the parties. Mr. Moses has consistently reported that he does not view adult material. And yet he told Dr. Johnson in his evaluation that he views pornography twice a week. His declaration from March 2 of 2022 stated that he has never watched pornography while the children are present, yet he told Dr. Johnson that he looks at pornography while the boys are in the home. He told Dr. Johnson that Lincoln saw pornography, and yet he told Ms. Lovely in the most recent evaluation that the children have never seen pornography. He told Dr. Johnson that he does not have a sexual problem, nor does he pose a risk to others. Yet if you go back to our initial motion back in 2022, you will see the handwritten documentation that Mr. Moses submitted to my client, where he acknowledged that he posed a risk to his children and that my client needed to take steps and actions in order to protect the children against him. There's also additional emails where he apologized for his behavior and the danger that his behavior placed the boys in. Advance forward to December of 2022, when he's making a request for this holiday visitation, he claimed that he had normal sexual appetites with no form of addiction. And yet at that time, he should have been, according to his claim, within 6 months or 5 months in treatment with Mr. Chinchin. There are multiple other instances throughout the reports to Ms. Height, to Dr. Johnson, to Ms. Lovely, to the court through declarations where he is minimizing or stating 180-degree different information and claims. Obviously, having Mr. Chinchin's information is vital. And again, none of the professionals, including Ms. Height, have had an opportunity to review through that. I would note that, again, when we were in court hearings, there was no true disclosure by Mr. Moses, and this is all documentation and information within his control. When he made those statements, ultimately, I followed up with a second discovery request, asking specifically for those documents. And look at what his discovery answers said and we received these as of September of 2022, of which he should have already been in treatment. They were signed by him on September 26th of 2022. I asked specifically for records. He claims that he was in a treatment, or he did SDI.
Well, again, Judge, I'm going to object to anything that's not before the court. I did not see any
Before
of that in any,
There's a,
excuse me, declarations.
well, there's a discovery attachment to the declaration that was
Yeah.
filed April 2nd.
Yeah, I don't know that I saw that, but that's.
So the last couple pages of the declaration.
So he says that he took tests on December of 2021. Normal results report has been purged per counselor. There's nothing in this that suggests that he was in treatment. And yet in November of 2023, he says that he just completed 18 months of treatment. Those don't align. And where are their records? So ultimately, I had to subpoena them. Initially, my subpoena was denied for priest penitent privilege because this is apparently a religious facility. Mr. Moses was asked and apparently did sign a release of information. And you can see the documentation that I filed under sealed health documentation on April 2. This is his evaluation from November of 2021. So clearly documentation that has not been purged. And yet I have received absolutely no treatment records, no attendance records, no treatment. There's a treatment recommendation. It doesn't say what they've done as far as treatment for him, and there's been no discharge documentation provided. Yet Mr. Moses now claims, although he doesn't have an addiction, that he's now completed treatment. So where are the discharge documents? And why haven't these been disclosed to Ms. Height, to Dr. Johnson, and to Ms. Lovely, and to me and my client? If you look on page 5 of those records, you will see that in 2021, he wasn't normal. He didn't test as normal. He identified or was above clinical threshold for internet items, men's items, preoccupation, loss of control, relationship disturbances, and affective disturbances. And these all correlate with his own assessment that he's a danger to his children when he cannot control his pornography. So advance forward then to how this correlates as far as the guardian ad litem recommendations and investigations that have taken place here. Back on November 7th of 2022, Ms. Hyde reported that the overlap of life as a porn addict, being the adult son of a porn addict, denial and minimizing of continuing addiction absent collateral proof were too much to overlook the risk to the children. Ms. Hyde indicated there was a risk to the children if he was not following through with his addiction. And when you get to her final GAO report, she tells you that she's treating his addiction as any other addiction. Somebody who's addicted to drugs or alcohol. Here we have a pornography addict. And she goes into her final report talking to the court about how this affects his brain and how he needs to have more and more contact in order to satisfy his pleasures. Her final report is filed on January 4th of 2023. That report does not discuss Ms. Height's knowledge that Mr. Moses has apparently been engaging in treatment with Mr. Chinchin or in group meetings. Ms. Height indicated that she, again, was treating his pornography as any other addiction. She talked about the addiction allowing riskier behavior while in search of repeated pleasure. She talks about Mr. Moses's multiple historical unsuccessful attempts to control his addiction, and she hoped that he would be able to get control of that in the future. She talks about Mr. Moses having access to multiple devices with internet access, and yet only has Covenant Eyes, which is apparently an app that keeps him from accessing pornography on one device. He easily could have that app on all of his electronic devices. He could have the reports from those apps forwarded to my client so that she can ensure that he's not accessing pornography. There has been absolutely no disclosure of the app materials from the Covenant Eyes that supposedly he has, at least through supplemental discovery or even information to the court. Ms. Height's final report recommended that he have first, third, and fifth weekends from Friday to Sunday. And I believe that was from 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Sunday. She at that time recognized that he could not be available to pick the children up or deliver the children to school because of the differences in their schedules. And yet the children are still at the same school and Mr. Moses still has the same work schedule. She also ordered or recommended that he not view pornography 4 hours prior to or during his residential time. She recommended that he have the alternating off week Wednesday, not overnight, but for it to end at 7 p.m. And there was no recommendation on extended time then. Ms. Height's most recent report, filed on February 29 of 2024, again does not appear to have any information or awareness of this 18 months of supposed treatment by Mr. Moses. And again, if an individual is saying that to this court in sworn declarations that I do not have an issue, then how effective is he going to be in treatment if he doesn't believe he has an addiction? Just through the 12-step program, he has to be able to he needs to be able to take control of the fact that he has this addiction and acknowledge that. If he doesn't acknowledge it, it's not successful. The children, as my client tells you in her declaration, started exhibiting increased sexualized concerning behavior before and after spending time with Mr. Moses. And it was based upon the pediatrician's recommendations that the boys started counseling.
From the pediatrician.
Sustaining the hearsay.
The boys started treatment or counseling with Ms. Rosen after this. The boys during counseling with Ms. Rosen have discussed the penis monster and that it's acceptable for the penis monster to touch their penises. And it's concerning that now in Mr. Moses's declaration, he again is making these outlandish accusations against my client about her anger and control and that she's over the top, when again, Mr. Moses has failed to produce documentation verifying what he's done. We have no clue what he's done. I have no explanation to this court why Pure Desire did not produce 18 months worth of treatment records, attendance records, discharge summaries, or the 9 months of group sessions that they should have had within their possession. Clearly, they had the records from 2021. One would assume that they would have the records from 22, 23, and there was nothing in their disclosure to us that indicated that records had been purged. Mr. Moses is an addict. He's addicted to pornography. The children have been exposed to pornography. When he is in his addiction, that affects his ability to protect these children, to parent these children, and there need to be safeguards in place. Our proposed parenting plan provides for those safeguards. And we're asking, and this is at paragraph 4A, 1 through 4 within our proposed parenting plan, asking that the court restrain and enjoin him from engaging in online activities or instruction with the children during his residential time, or allowing the children to have access to electronics other than to place phone calls. We're asking that he be restrained from viewing, accessing, or using any form of pornography or sexually explicit material at least 4 hours prior to or during his residential time with the children. Again, this was recommended by Ms. Height in her final recommendations to the court. Those being the ones from, I believe it was February of 2023. He should be enjoined and restrained from engaging in sexually explicit language and or behaviors during his residential time with the children. This is a generational issue. We're asking
anything that's considered as generational issues and the relevance to that here, whether that's true or not. It's an opinion, and it's certainly not supported by you. It's irrelevant to the issue.
I'll sustain as to relevant. Frankly.
Well, I think Ms. Height even commented about this being a generational.
Sustaining as to relevance.
Okay. We're asking that there be no unsupervised contact with the paternal grandfather, and that Mr. Moses should maintain blocks on all electronic devices for adult websites and other age-inappropriate material for the children, and that he should submit a declaration annually to the court and to the mother verifying compliance with this provision, that my client should be listed as one of the individuals to receive reports from the Covenant Eyes to be applied to all electronic devices used by him. It is our understanding still that Mr. Moses is not able to pick up and drop off the children during the times that the facility is open for purposes of visitation. We're asking that the court provide for the first, third, and fifth weekends from Fridays at 6 to Sundays at 6, and every second and fourth Wednesday as defined by Friday from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. We have provided for 2 one-week uninterrupted periods of residential time during the summer, and we provided for holidays. We think that that is appropriate so long as we've got safeguards in place. These children should not be exposed to pornography or his addiction. and we want to make sure that they are protected. The exchanges we propose should continue at the McDonald's at exit 49, which I believe is consistent with Ms. Height's most recent recommendation. If this were a drug addict, we don't just take participants' words. We need the clinical records and information. I have not seen any declaration from Mr. Chinchin as it relates to his treatment, other than what I submitted under sealed health. I know that counsel argued that during his motion, or during his argument. I was looking for that in my files. I don't see where I have that. So the court should disregard any statements attributed to Mr. Chinchin about Mr. Moses' deficiency as a parent. We need information about what he's done as far as treatment and where he's at in that process.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Height, I know you are present. Did you have any comments or have you seen the motions and proposed parenting plans?
I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Do you have any comments you'd like to add in addition to your report that was?
I guess I would just like to clarify a couple of things for Your Honor. You've heard a lot of information already today. The over 2-year history that has been discussed here, I believe represents an arch of recovery for Mr. Moses. I think a distinction could be made with any addiction issue, that there is the activity of an active addiction, and then there is the recovering addict. And I think that is part of the consideration that is relevant this afternoon. I would also just point out for Your Honor that when I was reappointed to this case, it was for a very narrow scope of information. So my report doesn't cover a broad range of things. I relied heavily on the experts that I was able to get written reports and also interview personally. Ms. Rosen, Ms. Lovely. I didn't speak with Mr. Norton, who is the individual who did the lie detector test, and then I reviewed Dr. Kirk Johnson's information. When I spoke with Ms. Lovely and Ms. Rosen, I was in the process of figuring out what I thought would work as a revised visitation schedule. And I discussed that with both of them. And both of them were affirmative in their, I don't want to say they were in full agreement because I didn't go over every detail, but they believed that the direction I was going to be in the boys' best interest. They particularly thought that the handoffs at the school made a lot of sense. I think that could certainly be worked out regarding their schedules. There could be third parties or other ways that if that is considered to be worthwhile, I think it would be pretty simple to put that into place, even though we're getting close to the end of the school year anyway. But I would like the court to know that I considered a lot of options, and I considered the scope of the case, the arch of the case, and I do believe that what I have recommended in this, I believe it's my 3rd report to the court, maybe the 4th, I'm comfortable with the recommendations that I offer to you this afternoon.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any response?
Yeah, just very briefly, because it's the same response the court's heard from me over the last couple of arguments, and that's because all of counsel's information is the same argument that we've heard since 2022. In fact, she goes back and spends ample time discussing 2022, 2021, and early 2023. So it's all the old information the court's already entertained. There's nothing more recent. There is nothing more my client can do. There's no more information the court can have showing that he is absolutely no danger to these kids. There was no comment on some of these issues that were relayed in Ms. Moses's declaration, which, again, if we look at the reality, so we look at what likely may or may not have happened. We go back to the soccer game from the fall. Court's already dismissed that. Fast forward beyond that, she said, well, one of the kids was allegedly touching himself for upwards of 5 minutes, and I took him to the pediatrician. Wouldn't it make sense at the soccer game that somebody of those 200 spectators would have stepped in and said, hey, this guy is touching this child inappropriately? Wouldn't it have been appropriate for a mother of a kid this age to say after 5 minutes, hey, quit touching yourself like that? She doesn't tell my client he's touching himself like that. She takes him to a pediatrician, and then allegedly this pediatrician does whatever's required.
I guess I would object. One, this is outside of the scope of the declarations, and I think Mr. Zandy is
argument.
Two different issues. Okay.
Well, without getting into the details of the
Sure.
statements that are in the declarations. Go ahead.
All of this, it just kind of culminates into one parent who is intentionally trying to take something that could be innocent, should be small, and just balloon this for litigation purposes. This has been the tactic. It's getting worse. The reports come back, all the evaluations come back clean, yet we still go back to 2021 and 2022 prior to the data separation of these parties. And mind you, my client has always known that Mrs. Moses, his wife, then had an issue with pornography. Attempt to save that marriage. He acts the way he acts. He does what he does, again, under her guise of control. I think it's interesting to point out, counsel goes through and states what she would like to see in the parenting plan. One of which, she wants apps forwarded to her client so that she can review what my client is looking at on online material. She also wants no access to electronics for the kids, knowing that the kids play this Pokemon Go game for 30 minutes, knowing that she regularly gives these kids electronic access in her home, and then blows up the fact of, or her alleged fact, well, these kids have been exposed to pornography. They've never been exposed to pornography. And again, that's borne out from my client's declaration, again, the information from the experts. Take it a step further. And she says, well, we want a declaration on an annual basis so that she can look at all the electronic devices owned by my client. And then counsel states, if this were a drug addict, it's not a drug addict. These are two very distinctive, different addictions. They're treated differently. Obviously, one has a great impact on the kids. The other, as you see by the experts, does not have any impact on these kids on a day-to-day control mechanism like counsel is portraying to you. Again, based on her client's statements and her declaration, when she's an engineer, she is not an addiction specialist. So again, we've got one person in the room who says, my client's addiction is out of control. He needs to go through more steps. I don't know what more steps he could possibly go. They keep talking about pure desires. Well, the counsel's correct. That is privileged information because that's run through a church, and that privilege does apply. And that's probably why they're reluctant to give her that information. So that's the answer to that. Tyler Chinchin has worked with my client. Everybody understands that. Everybody knows that. The information you can provide, again, is under the pure desires umbrella, so it's limited. Again, we all know that. He's taken accountability for this. The emails that were sent prior to these parties separating, again, that's water under the bridge. That was years ago. What Ms. Moses wants you to do is just to continue to put my client under her thumb, under her level of control, and nothing displays that better than the parenting plan that she proposed, in which she wants my client to jump through hoops that are completely unreasonable, providing declaration and access to his electronic devices, and essentially telling him what he can and cannot do with the children in his home when this is a good father. Again, if that's not a form of alienation and control, I'm not really sure what is, but that's been the goal from this from the very beginning, is to punish my client, not preserve what's in the best interest of these kids. The GAL has spoken. Ms. Rosen has given input. Obviously, you've had the reports from Dr. Johnson and Ms. Lovely. You've got everything that's there that says this man is of no danger to children. And you've got somebody who details for you. Again, what he's done with his life. He's a teacher. He does that. He's a coach. He does that. He's the head of a department at his school. He does that. There's never been any whispers or allegations of any improprieties on his behalf or attributed to him. Yet here we are now, nearly 3 years later, going over the same arguments despite a mound of evidence that shows he is of no danger to these kids. These kids deserve a relationship with dad. He certainly deserves a relationship with them. The parenting plan we have proposed is in the best interest of those kids.
So I guess just from a procedural standpoint, this was back originally, there was a decree of dissolution entered in the issue of parenting plan was bifurcated. I was not involved in the case at that time that I recall. And so I'm not clear on the reasoning why that was done. I assume it had something to do with this. So it seems to me that I guess what we're looking at here, you're asking for a change in the temporary plan. Are you anticipating there will be something further in this case, or is this expected to be a resolution of the case?
No, honestly, I think due to the bifurcation, the parenting plan issue is still out there. We just got the GAL report pursuant the update on that pursuant from Commissioner Carmey's ruling back in December. Yeah, I would assume this goes to some kind of a formal hearing, that being trial somewhere down the road, because this is still an outstanding issue of the case under the original cause number.
Along with child support.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's true.
So I'm just trying to look at the existing parenting plan, which is the one that appears to be the one that is
December 15, clerk's paper number 90.
what exact what is the difference in the plan you're proposing and the plan that we have currently?
Right now, it's essentially every other weekend, Friday through Sunday. We're asking for the adopt, and again, that was pending the final GAO investigation pursuant to Commissioner Carmey's ruling. Take a look at it and see where we're at that point. You see from that report that expands on it quite a bit. So my client doesn't have currently any holiday time specified. He doesn't have any summertime specified. He's locked into that essentially every other weekend. It might be first, third, fifth, but it's an every other weekend, Friday to Sunday. We're asking you to extend the weekends pursuant to the GAO recommendation from Thursday to Monday, Thursday after school to Monday morning to school, or whatever time if there is no school that day. And the off weeks, Thursday overnight to Friday. Again, I believe, and I'll let Ms. Height address that, but I think this is consistent with her recommendation. And then replace the current reserved language in the summer schedule to a week on, week off in the summer moving forward. And some kind of account for holidays, we can certainly work that in, but it's a change to what that existing plan is and has been. Again, pursuant to what Commissioner Carmey ruled last fall.
So currently it's alternates Fridays to Sunday.
I'm sorry?
Friday to Sunday or Friday through Sunday?
Friday to Sunday, Friday evening to Sunday evening.
The current plan is first, third, and fifth weekends as defined by Friday, from Friday at 6 p.m. to Sunday at 6 p.m. And then originally the order was that he was to have the off week Wednesday. The parties misunderstood that and actually exercised every Wednesday. And Commissioner Carmey changed that in the second amended parenting plan that was entered in December to reflect what they've been doing as far as the every Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m.
And that Wednesday is not an overnight. That's pretty much just a dinner in which he takes the kids to practice and participates with that.
Okay, and that's happening every Wednesday currently?
Correct.
Okay.
And then that was again pending further information from the GAO.
And again, Ms. Height indicates 2 non-consecutive uninterrupted weeks during the summer, not a week on, week off. My client has historically been the children's primary parent. And since their separation, clearly she's been the primary parent. We think that that would be way too much for them to do a week on, week off during the summer.
Okay, well, what I'm inclined to do is 2 things, is make an adjustment to the current plan, leaving the current schedule, but adding Thursday to each of those weekends. So from Thursday after school to Monday, and then on the first, third, and fifth, that continue into the summer. And then between council, I would expect you could work out alternate holiday visits. That should probably be if a holiday attaches to one of these weekends, that would be included. And then I can put you on for next Wednesday actually I can put you on tomorrow probably for trial assignment. This probably just needs to get heard.
So Thursday after school to Monday to school, or what, 5 p.m. if no school?
I mean, that makes sense. If it's a Monday holiday, that would include, that would cover a lot of our holidays that are pending.
And then Ms. McLean and I work on the holidays. And how about the summer?
Summer I'm going to leave as is until we get a hearing.
And do you want in the off weeks, that second and fourth, a Thursday to Friday?
I just said first, third, and fifth from Thursday to Sunday.
So just keep the first, third, fifth, extend the weekend.
Right, and then I'm going to leave the Wednesdays as it is. I think that makes sense if that's what they've been doing, just for continuity. And then do you want to show up tomorrow, or do you want to go to the 24th for a trial assignment?
I would like to be able to talk to my client about options. So council and I can work out a date to get that set.
Yeah, I'm fine with that suggestion.
Okay. So you're gone next week, Ms. McLean, if I remember correctly?
Through Tuesday. I'm
Through
back
Tuesday.
on.
We don't have a doc on. We want to put this on for the 7th for presentation?
Sure.
Okay, so 7th of May for presentation at 1 o'clock.
Can we change anything with phone calls or paragraph 14, other provisions? Or are we just going to, what do you want to do on that?
We're asking the court to maintain the current provisions as it relates to child-directed phone calls. That was what Ms. Rosen felt was very important, and my client has been.
So I'll just leave it
making
pursuant to the
changes
old
to-
existing order.
Everything else is existing.
Very well.
Okay. And if you get an agreed order, certainly we can strike the hearing on the
Sure.
7th.
Yes, Your
Thank
Honor.
you.
My name is Akram Shabat, and I'm here as representation for the respondent, James Duryea.
Very good. Thank you. And I believe I saw Jennifer Duryea is present. I don't know if I saw anyone else. Mr. Zandy is present in the courtroom. And I did have, I believe, a proposed order on this one.
Yes, you should. That came over on April 10th.
All right, we do have that. And I don't believe I saw any objections to that order. So counsel, did you receive that order?
Yes, Your Honor, I received that order. I'm a little new to this case. I was onboarded last week. So I wanted to take some time to potentially request a continuance so I could have some more time to understand this case and issue an objection.
Your Honor, normally I would have, as I relayed to counsel, no issues with that. Unfortunately, this is a case that you heard the argument 2 weeks ago, and issues are already starting to develop between my client and Mr. Related to that property. This is one where you specifically said that he was to be off the property by today. My understanding is that there's been significant problems that have been brewing since we were in court with that. So I would like, and I think that it's a basic order. I think it certainly reflects the court's ruling. I would ask that you enter that if for no other reason than it establishes that that property my client can obtain without having the fear of recourse from her long-term husband, which has been unfortunately pretty prominent over the past several months since these parties separated. So we are asking you sign that today. It's pretty basic, and again, I think it complies with what the court's ruling was.
Let me just look at it here. This is really just entry. We had a hearing a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just looking through. I didn't see an objection, so I didn't look that closely at it. So let me just take a quick peek here. This appears to be what I ordered. What I'm inclined to do, counsel, is to enter this if you want to talk with your client and looking at some sort of reconsideration. And that isn't certainly didn't foreclose that, but this reflects what I ordered 2 weeks ago. So I'm inclined to enter this.
Your Honor, the reason that I'd like some time or the reason I'd like to request a continuance is so I can have some time to put together a proper objection, because the biggest issue here is that my client does not have anywhere else to go. This is the only property that he's living on, because whether this property is separate or community, it is a community property. Whether it was obtained with separate or community funds is in question and needs to be evaluated through discovery. At that time, in the meanwhile, Mr. Duryea does not have anywhere to go. He is staying on this property.
Well, that would be a reconsideration. I would object to that. I think this is certainly the form of the order is appropriate. That's what the court ruled. Although I appreciate the request for more time, I don't think that impacts the objection to the form of the order anymore.
Right. I mean, like I said, if he wants to file a reconsideration, this is what I ordered. So I'm going to sign this order. And I'm aware of the circumstances, and I was aware of those when we had the hearing. So, but I'll be happy to look at a reconsideration if that's filed. One is Mr. Gilmore, Mr. Zandy on the Bryant matter. I don't know if you want to try and address that today, or if you want to try and do that offline.
Well, is Ms. Gilmore present?
She is.
Well, we did attempt to discuss this this morning in between dockets. I'm not sure if we made any headway. I did have my staff reach out to my client about some of the practical issues with the house, with the support, with relocating, those types of things. We didn't get any. Part of the motion, and this is going back, I think 2 motions ago, was what are we going to do with that house? Who's going to live on that on a temporary basis? Is when originally ordered that my client was there with the child Riker. To refresh your memory, there's also a senior in high school. The court does not have jurisdiction over. That's my client's child from a prior relationship. I can't answer you as far as where my client plans to go, how long it's going to take her to get there. I would like to have a conversation with her in my office about that.
Why don't we do this? Let me suggest, obviously, I recognize this happened just Friday. So why don't we put this over 1 week? You two can talk, and I'm happy to give any responses via email on any details I can, but we could take a look at it next Tuesday. That'd give you both an opportunity to talk to your clients.
That's fine by me. Any objections to just submitting email clarifications to Judge Bashor, Ms. Gilmore?
No, I guess if the court could, on section 3 of your ruling, you do indicate that
there's going to be a change of placement and residence on May 1st. I understand that Mr. Zandy is objecting to the 2-week timeline for her moving out, but in general, overall, is the court ordering her to eventually move out at some point? We're just discussing when that's going to occur, or is the court reserving on that request? I wasn't sure what the ruling.
Well, the ruling essentially with the guardian ad litem recommendation made essentially that recommendation, and that was what I was adopting. I recognize the timeline is really short, and that is something that we probably could look at. And I think
Okay, I think that's really the clarification I need, and I think that we can, yes, 1 week is sufficient, and then I think that we can hopefully coordinate some of the dates and financial issues between now and then. If we could just note for the minutes that if we have any objections regarding finances, potentially Mr. Zandy and I could present updated short declarations on the financial issues.
sure, I'm fine with that.
Your Honor, if I might,
Ms. Height?
I am not available next week, but it doesn't sound like you're anticipating that you're going to need me.
I don't think so. I think this is probably just working out some details.
Okay.
So
So if I do not appear,
it will be just fine.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
1 week, and then again, if I can clarify anything via email, I'm happy to do that, and then we can come back and talk about it next week if we haven't got a result.
And if we, okay, then I guess file.
And if you come to an agreement on how you want
If we
to,
need to,
I'm sorry?
file short little supplemental declarations if we need to about the finances.
Yeah, and that could be done relatively late in the game if you need to. So,
Okay.
I mean, we're on short timelines, I understand. So, and again, we need to adjust the deadline on that, just recognizing that this came out kind of later.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll put it over 1 week for review on the 23rd at 1 o'clock. I believe I saw Poplowski logged in.
Yes, Your Honor, I apologize. I was in the presentation docket, so I apologize for being late to this docket.
I understand. I believe, what did we do in that case? I think we either set it over or I think we set it over for.
I think we need to, Ms. McLean needs some additional time to review our order.
Right. I think that's what we came up with.
Over 5-7.
I think we set it over to 5-7.
Your Honor, I really wanted to get it sooner. What's happening is the order allows my client to have his visitation time increased. And so without that order, he's not being allowed to have that visitation time increased. So it'll essentially be quite some time. It's the order is pretty simple the way I wrote it. It's not very, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Well, the two problems is Ms. McLean, I think, is still present. Ms. McLean or her staff is anybody from Ms. McLean's office here? I see a name there, but I don't see any answer. The problem is I don't have a copy of the order. So I couldn't even address it today anyway.
I guess I would just ask that this court instruct counsel to make sure that the parties know that they're supposed to be following the recommendations of Ms. Rosen, because it's just not going to be followed unless the order is signed is the problem.
Well, like I said, I entered my order and I don't have a proposed order to look at, so I have no idea what the order says. And that was one of the concerns Ms. McLean had, is she did not see the order. And I don't know what that issue is, if I recall correctly.
Well, it was emailed on the 10th to her. I think we forwarded the email.
Oh, that may be. I just haven't seen it, so I don't know what the order says. So, and I believe she's gone next week. We don't have court on the 30th, so the next available date we have is the 7th.
Okay.
So that's where we put it based on where we were at this morning. Oops, oh, it looks like she's back. Let me just pull her back in here. All right. Ms. McLean?
Yes, my assistant was still listening in, but she can't talk. So.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Poplowski signed in, and I believe she signed in kind of in the middle of the docket. We didn't get to that. So I guess a concern about whether the plan, well, why don't you let us know what that is?
Sure. I guess the concern I just have is that the court did order the parties to follow the recommendations of Ms. Rosen. I don't think there's a disagreement on that, but because there isn't an order entered yet, my client isn't getting his extended visits because Ms. McLean's client is not agreeing to that. So I was hoping
That's not accurate. That is completely inaccurate.
Well, he's not being allowed them. So
it's not my client's issue. It's I'm assuming that Ms. Rosen's office, they need to arrange scheduling.
Okay. I don't want to argue.
I don't appreciate
with 7th.
So I need a proposed order.
It was emailed on the 10th. We forwarded you that email. I
did not have an email from you from the 10th.
We re-forwarded to you this morning after I asked about the status of it. We re-forwarded.
Who? Who did you forward it to?
To you and to your assistant.
Well, and again, counsel, I don't have that order, so I have no idea what it's.
And I don't have that order.
Maybe.
I don't have that order. I have an email from 7:48 this morning and 8:27 a.m. that says, my sincere apologies. I thought my assistant sent it over. Let me look into this. I've not received any other emails from you or your staff.
I'll forward it again. The 7th is fine then, Your Honor, if that's the earliest that I have.
Yeah, and I believe you were said you were gone next Tuesday, Ms. McLean.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the next docket we have available.
Sure. Yeah, that was at 9:28, Ms. McLean, just so you know that I personally sent it to you and your assistant.
Neither my assistant nor I. Why don't you call me? I have a phone. Let's talk.
Yeah. It would be good if we had a proposed order filed or provided to the court as well, because I can't do anything with it until I see it.
Okay.
All right. Afternoon.
Thank you.
Afternoon. Welcome. All right. So, right. And I have not heard any additional, how are things going?
There's one thing that I would like to request in addition to hit supervised visits every other weekend. We didn't address sports events or school events.
Let me take a look here. Just going back to the recommendation that was filed by Ms. Schaefer. No, I see Ms. Schaefer is present on Zoom. I don't know if you can hear us.
I can, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. So this is the Bolson and Johnson matter.
Yes.
If you could restate what your concerns were.
I just wrote something up real quick just because I'm so humiliated by the last school event. I'm requesting that Chris also have supervised visits by Care Lloyd when he wants to attend any sporting or school events until he has 6 months proof of clean ways. On April 9th, Chris showed up to Zach's track meet unsupervised. He approached Zach on his own numerous times during his meet. I called Kay and asked if she was at the track meet. I then said that I didn't know Chris should be there without her or Lloyd as it wasn't approved by the court yet for him to see Zach besides every other weekend. She said that she would talk to him and we could find out at court what to do. Please keep in mind, I did not approach Chris on my own. I discussed this with Kay as a middle party. Chris then approached me as I had my 1-year-old in my arms saying to call the cops over and over. As I continued to try and walk away, he was continuing behind me and proceeded to call me a effing weirdo over and over. I continued to walk away until he stopped. I then walked my daughter's.
Objection. Can I object to this?
Well,
this is exactly what happened.
Okay, well, I think what we probably need to do, and this was really a review today. I think it's what it would probably be useful to do would be to have you put something in writing.
Okay.
And file it with the court.
Okay.
Send a copy to him. He can respond to that, and I can put this out a couple of weeks. And I mean, you're under the same the recommendation from Ms. Schaefer.
Is every other weekend supervised?
Right. So that's what you need to follow, sir.
Yeah.
So am I allowed to go to his track meets?
I assume if you're just watching, that's probably, do you have an objection to that if he's just watching?
The problem is he isn't just watching, he's
No, that's not-
approaching
that's
Zach
not correct.
and
Well, hold
he's
on, sir.
approaching me and
Incorrect.
humiliating me and following me and calling me names.
Total objection.
Okay, well, hold on.
Out of line.
Okay, I'll let you file with your concerns. And if you're going to be anywhere around any sporting events, you need to stay away from her state. Then you can watch at this point.
She's
Sir?
saying that I approached her.
I'm not-
That's totally incorrect.
Okay, all I'm saying, well, I'll see what you both have to say, but I want you to submit it in writing so that you both can look at what you're going to say ahead of time.
Okay.
And I can put this out and come back on the 7th, which will really, unless you think you can be ready before next week.
The 7th is fine.
So the 7th, which is 3 weeks from today. So file what your concerns are, your requests. I'll take a look at it and we'll go from there.
And what's the paper that I file?
This is a declaration.
Okay.
And it would be under oath. And then if you can file that with the clerk, and then I'll take a look at those when we come back on this before the 7th, and we'll address whatever issues that we need to.
Okay. And have any clean UAs been turned in or?
I do not have anything at this
Okay.
point.
They're
So we're
getting
still-
ready to start coming in. That my treatment facility is so,
Okay, well, if you have those should be filed with copies to her. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll set this over to the 7th for review and status on everything.
And that's at 1 o'clock.
Be at 1 o'clock,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. Am I able to do it online through Zoom?
You certainly can.
Oh,
Yeah, you certainly can. And there's a link on our website to get to that if you want to review it. So we'll come back and we'll take a look at it in 3 weeks.
Your Honor,
You are welcome.
I didn't quite catch that. If I'm not allowed to attend the track meet though. That's
At
hard
this
enough
point,
to
just-
get to his events since they're
At this-
so far.
Okay, I can't talk to you about your case with her gone,
Okay.
so
I got you.
it's all, okay. We'll come back in 3 weeks and take a look at it. All right, I believe that is everything on this docket, so we will be adjourned.